Good morning. I will start my morning spiritual practice and I invite you to join me. We will first take a yoga class, and today we'll take the Restart 2 class by Yoga with Adrienne. Still coming back to our practice, so that's a fitting practice to do. I'm hoping to do the whole series. It takes, I think, 7 days. Then if you want to join me, then the link to the practice is pinned in the comments and also in the video description. I actually just noticed I don't have that I don't have the link in the YouTube video, so give me 1 second. Let me just put that there. Let me get there to the, let me see if I can update the description. I'm just going to put them in the chat. And there you have it. So you have the link in the comments, in the chat. All right, we're good. Yes, and so what you will do is you put me on one screen, you put Adrienne's video in a different screen, and then I'm going to count us down so that we're synchronized. I'm going to say ready, set, go. And then when I say go, we click together. And at that point, we're synchronized, so you can use me for body doubling and take the practice with me. After that, I'm going to transition today straight into meditation. So I'm going to go from yoga straight into meditation. I'm not going to return here to talk. I'm going to take advantage of the feelings that yoga gave us, that feeling of focus and turning inward, to go straight into meditation. And I hope you'll do the same. I will meditate for as long as it seems natural. It can go a while. And so if you will follow me, then don't worry about when it will end. I will ring a bell at the end. And when you hear that bell, then you know that it's time to end the session. And if you don't know what to do, if you don't know how to meditate, or you don't know, you're having some difficulties, or you need some guidance, then write something in the comments and then I will answer. Also remember that we have a Discord, a community there for you to ask questions or suggest practice. We can, discuss the path. There's also a way there to receive stream alerts. And the link is in the channel info and also in the video description. After the meditation, we'll reconvene here for a discussion. And today I will discuss why the typical mindset that people approach meditation with is wrong. And there is a different mindset that leads to real change, that actually helps with real progress, instead of just keep using meditation to patch some issues and sort of momentarily alleviate some symptoms, and at the end of the day never leading to any lasting change. And so, all right, so let's get started. I will put my earphones so I can hear my video and you don't hear my video. You can put your own loud. Give it a second. And there you are. One thing you should know is that if you sign up for alerts in the Discord, you will receive the class link 5 minutes before we start. I think they go off at 6:25 a.m. or something like that. So you can get set up sooner. Okay, so we're ready to start. And ready, set, go. The general mindset when people talk about meditation is not ideal. It is not going to achieve what people want from meditation as effectively as a different mindset that I am going to suggest here. And the most important piece here is effort. You force yourself to meditate and to build some sort of habit and approach it from a perspective of optimization. That goes against the practice. The typical thing that people think about is, what technique should I use? What is the best way to meditate? How long should I meditate? How to build that habit so that I can achieve being a meditator? And the mindset is somewhat similar to how we do other kinds of habits that we're supposed to do. Things like, for example, exercising. If you think about the reasons why people exercise, if you have this sort of consumeristic vision of it and you say, I'm going to schedule that exercise and I'm going to do it every day, generally speaking, you're going to achieve more or less what you want there. It is not a bad way to go about things. I want to separate meditation into a different realm. I want to discuss what it actually is and why you shouldn't think of it this way. And I think that that's useful for many reasons. First, because it is much more likely that you'll be a successful meditator, whatever that is. But it's much more likely that you're going to enjoy it and get it. And more important than that, I don't know if that's more important, but and also you will be able to get out of it what you really want to get out of it. Because why do people meditate? All right, so we'll discuss this later. But whatever this is, I think it's much more likely to be achieved with a different mindset. And I want to return quite a bit to the discussion that we had yesterday. And for people who were not with us yesterday, I am going to be posting on YouTube a recap, a video with the discussion that we had yesterday. So just look up the video that's called Why You Should Meditate or something like that. And in that video, I developed this thesis, which is, long and quite complex in a sense, but it's truly at the essence of the things I'm going to be talking about today, which is that you have to understand the meditation as getting to know the inner world, so getting to know an entirely new dimension of reality, where you have the opportunity to greatly expand your perception. So you have the opportunity to understand that the world is a lot bigger than you think. And by a lot, I mean more than double what you think it is. And the opportunities for experience, the opportunities for perceiving things, the opportunity for knowing things, it's just enormous. And it's what, is fun, it is interesting, and is also at the root of what we're here to do. And I wanted to have the idea that I was developing there, that it is a process of growing up. So it is not different from going from being a baby to being an adult, which I hope you are, or I hope you're becoming. And it is not different from the continuation of that process. So it is a continuation of the growth, and it naturally continues into a different dimension, let's just say that way. And if you think about this, so if you have that premise, then consider what makes somebody grow, and then consider how the mindset that people have about meditation is completely off. When you think about what is the best technique, how should I meditate? Should I meditate 20 minutes a day? And then, there is a certain anxiety related to it, a certain productification of meditation that goes against the point. Imagine this. Imagine that you have a child that you need to help grow up. And imagine that I say to the child, that I think about how would I optimize the growth of that child? And I am going to figure out what is the single most important technique that this child should repeat so that they grow better. And then I, for some reason, zero in on the fact that the child should do piano. So that child should like practice piano. So now all I do to that child is, you're going to practice piano. That's what you do. Every day you practice piano, and then I do nothing else. Or I optimized in the realm of all things that the child should do, and I came across piano as being the thing, and that's all the child does. Would this child grow in the best way possible? The fact is the child will grow. All lessons, I might be exaggerating, but a huge bulk of lessons in life are contained in a single activity. If you do it long enough and dedicatedly enough, you will achieve from a single activity quite a bit of the realm of things that could be experienced. Because in the repetition, there is quite a lot to learn. There's quite a person will learn, patience and dedication and so on. And so at the end of the day, it serves. But would you consider this to be the best way to raise a child? There are some people that are quite extreme, and they will get into something and that will be the theme of their lives, right? So this person's going to be a chess player or something like that, and they will be quite extreme. And it is true of some people, but for the majority of people, would you raise a child that way? Would you like to have been raised yourself that way? Would you raise your own children that way? I don't think we would. We have some sort of intuition that the best way to raise a child is with a gamut of experiences and a gamut of practices, involving formal things that the child would need to do for education, a whole lot of natural experiences, a whole lot of free time and things like that. That is how we think humans grow best. Well, we are talking about growth. We're talking about the continuation of growth into a different dimension. Why would that then suddenly change when you move into the aspect of getting to know this new dimension of reality? Why would it be the best way to become obsessively concerned with what is the best way to do this, and making everything efficient and optimizing it, and having this attitude of sort of productivity there? And I noticed, as I'm speaking, that in some sense these days we sort of have that same attitude towards children, and it doesn't work. It doesn't work that well. The psychology and education literatures are, in science, are full of evidence against that. So, whatever it is not the best way, and I suggest that is not the best way for meditation as well. And I'm going to get into more detail about what is the attitude to have. All right. So the thing is, do not lose track of the fact that we are talking about growth. We're talking about growing up. And growing up is a very complex thing. And so it is not different from how you grew up from a baby to an adult. It is not different from that process. It's the continuation of the process. So the rules apply. They continue to apply. The way you grow up best as a human is the way you continue growing up that way. So why does this happen? So why do we even do this? That's important, because that is the trap. That is the reason why we get trapped into it. And part of it is that there is a measurability to repetition and optimization. Let's just say that you figured out that you should do some breathing technique that you learn somewhere that is going to be the best way to progress. If you repeat something long enough, you will have a sense of progress, because you're going to get better at that. Whatever it is that you do, if you keep doing that same thing always in the same way, you will get better. And as you get better, you have a sense of progress. So the beauty of repetition is that it gives measurability. You get to compare, and when you can compare, then you can measure if you have improved. And so you have the sensation of progress, which is very satisfying, and is also motivating. And then it gives you that impression that you are progressing. Now, it is true you are progressing, of course, but you are progressing in a very narrow sense. So it's a narrow sense of progression. It gives you the illusion of, swimming through and basically going very fast, when in reality, again, would you consider, if you had to help a child grow and you had this child do piano nonstop, or the soccer nonstop, that child would get better at that. Would you say this child has grown up? Would you say that this child has achieved the things that the child needs to know? Probably at some point they will, right? By being on that activity, by grappling with that activity long enough. But is this the way a child really grows best? You see, this is the problem of measurability. It's an issue of control. We have this sort of need of controlling processes and having this idea that it is going somewhere, that it is achieving something. And when you have this mindset, there is something that calms you down, calms your anxiety, calms your uncertainty about the fact that growing up is very difficult. It's very complex, and that is not a linear process at all. And it is a process that develops most of the time when you're not watching. And, one day you wake up and you have grown in some sense. But that is hard. It's a hard thing it's a hard place to be in. And so we try to avoid it, right? By finding measurements. And we do this to childhood too, right? So we establish all these tests and ways in which we can measure the progress of children, which again, we know is a very narrow way to understand how a child grows, and it causes this, you manage. So what is it? You manage what you measure, right? And so it causes us to manage those aspects while then forgetting other aspects which are very important. So in the case of children, if you focus enormously on cognitive skills, which is what we do, all of the tests measure exactly that. So we can figure out if they know enough math, if they know enough language, the language arts, if they have enough reading comprehension, if they have enough knowledge of geography and history and so on. But how do you measure if a child is resilient, if a child is able to stay calm, if a child has control of their emotions, if a child has the ability to make friends, if a child has the ability to not freak out, if the child, all the non-cognitive skills are very, very hard to measure. And guess what? They are enormously important and hugely determining even of the things that you would like to measure later on. So how do we measure adulthood? Oh, we measure it on success. So we measure in how much you make. We measure in, are you married? Do you have the kids? Do you have the trips? Do you have, we measure on those things. Well, guess what? Even if you want those things as an adult, you're going to need your non-cognitive skills later on. So even if all you want in life is the measures of success that can be shown on Instagram, even if you want that the best way to get there is not just through cognitive skills. You cannot forget the fact that you need to grow in all these intangibles that are developed in a very messy way by having friends, by being frustrated in life, by just kind of suffering a bit and by experiencing things. They can't be controlled all that well. Even if you want that, let alone if you actually want a rich life that has meaning, where there you really have to confront the fact that you are a whole being that has some needs that are very hard to measure, and an entire life that is very subjective. And again, very hard to measure. It's very hard to measure everything that is subjective. And so if you think about child growth, and you think that what we are doing here is growing into a new dimension, into the knowledge of a whole new side of reality and side of ourselves, how do you think you're going to do it successfully just by virtue of measurable things, and a success and a thing that can be measured in a progressing way? And notice that is different from exercise, because you can exercise your way that way. Perhaps you might not learn to love it, that way, but you will have success in exercise if you just do it in however way you can, even if you repeat, and it's true, to be a properly fit person, you need to have a certain amount of disciplines. And, there are ways in which it's more complex than just repetition. But this is different, right? So you can't set an agenda and put everything on paper and then be successful at this, at exercise. You can do it with your diet too. You can do it. I want to eat healthy. Let us define what it is, and you can make it happen in this very concerted way. But you can't grow like this. And I want you to start getting into this mindset. And, let's keep going deep into this rabbit hole, because there is more to think about when you start having this mindset. But this is the thing. Meditation is not just one more thing that you do. It can be, but then it will be it will be very superficial compared to what it can do for you if you see it that way. This is the mindset that I want you to get into. So let's continue. Another thing too is that even the definition of what it means to grow is a weird one, because consider what is a grown-up. You know it when you see it. So there are some people that you can look at and you say, "Oh, that's a grown-up. I think I'm a grown-up." So I look at myself these days and I say, "You know what? I'm a grown-up." And perhaps you do it for yourself, or not yet. You don't feel that way yet. But there are some people that you might look at them and you say, that's a person that's got it figured out in some deep sense there, that you think that you associate with, this is a grown-up. Well, there are many ways to be a grown-up, and there are many ways to be a successful grown-up, in the sense of being a functional adult, right? So let's just think of a functional adult. A functional adult has a fair sense of, so a fair amount of security in the finances. So whether it lives with little or lives with a lot, it is a person that is not stressed out about how they survive. It is a person that is also not particularly stressed out in their relationship to society. So how they stand with respect to others. And it is a person that does not have a lot of issues with respect to how they are emotionally. So do they have a relationship with somebody else or not, right? Some close relationships, do they have children or not, and so on. So we think of these kinds of things. We think of things like, this person is someone who can take care of others. So it will be in a position to do that, either for children or for elders or for a community. There's somebody who is in that position to do something for others. We think of a person that has some level of control, and control is a bad word, but some peace with their feelings, right? So it's somebody who is okay, fairly all right with themselves. They're not suffering tremendously in their mind with either a mental issue, or with hang-ups, or with traumas and things like that. So, you think of things like that. There's a lot, right? If you think about it, that's a lot to achieve. And most adults in this world have not reached all of these dimensions. Most of the time you may have some of those figured out, but then you kind of walk towards figuring out the others. But there are some people that have, and when you look at all these dimensions of somebody, people don't look the same. You can have somebody that is like that by being in a standard, very mundane life, who figured out the simplicity. Right, you might see that on some people that have found a mission in life and are kind of, they were able to fix their life so that it directs in that dimension. So these people, might be somebody who decided to dedicate their life to science, is a very successful person, is married to a person that is accepting, and they have it all right, that the main focus of the life of that person is their profession, and they have, no children. They somehow figure it out so that they're at peace, in that setting. That's a very different life. What about a monk, right? A monk is somebody who abandons your normal society and highly reduces all of these things so that they can dedicate to the inner world most of their time and energy. There's also an adult. These are very different ways to be an adult. There are very, very different objectives too. So how do you even think about what is the ideal way to get there. Well, it depends a lot on how do you want to be as an adult, right? And then, so the best technique to become an adult who is a monk is very different from the best technique to become an adult who is a householder, a person who lives a normal standard life, right? Of having a family and having a profession and things like that. So it's a very different path, the one that leads there. So there is a way to be a grown up. And now let us consider what it is to be a grown up in the inner world. Well, it's not different from being a grown up, a complete, fully grown individual in the spiritual world. What does that mean? Well, I like the word enlightened because it is a catch-all for quite a few complicated states. But yeah, it would be like somebody that's enlightened. So what does that mean? Well, in the Eastern sense, it would mean somebody, if you're a Buddhist, it would mean that you've realized emptiness and the fact that fundamentally nothing is real. There is no God and things like that. If you are perhaps a Hindu, you might have realized the essence of totality, so the essence of God as basically everything being one. That would also be true of a lot of Western magic, theistic Western magic, things like Neoplatonism and all the things that derive from there. You might think that it is, if you are a religious person of Western religion, then it would be realizing the essence of God, right? So being in communion with God and having an understanding of its nature, right? Having the ability to see its face and not die, to quote the Bible, in a sense. These kinds of very elevated things, to be in communication, right, with divinity. All of these things are very different things, actually, in a sense. They're not the same state. Now, there is a sense in which they are less varied than the ways to be an adult, but I don't think that's true. If you experience some of these states, you will see that there is a sense in which they are all a form of realization, and yet they are not the same. There's quite a bit of difference. And the techniques are also different, and the way to reach there are different, and the ways to be are different. So even that idea, that there is a path, it's a strange one. There's not a single target to aim at in the first place. So the main point here is that I'm calling for a attitude shift, and the ask here is sort of like poetic, is that you have to decide to wake up, right? It is kind of poetic because people use that word, right, for the spiritual life. They use waking up. You gotta wake up, and I think that it is very fitting here to think about it this way. So I want you to see meditation and see the in a sense those practices as a form of waking up in the inner world. And sure, it's very poetic, but I'm gonna show you how specific this is, because it is actually not that poetic. It's actually very precise. Consider what it means to be born. When you're a baby, consider the fact that you're only truly in the world that you inhabit. You're only truly in this world, in the one we're talking about right now, in the physical world. You're only here when you're awake. So you need to be awake to be here. And consider that when you are a baby sleeps most of the time. In fact, when they're not sleeping, the parents are like, please sleep. So a baby is not asleep a lot, is not awake a lot. So consider that when we come into this world, we are not here all the time. We are here very little of the day. So throughout the day, you are awake very little. And consider also that the baby is awake and with bouts of peacefulness, but also a lot of stress. The baby cries a lot. Right? So babies tend to cry, so they tend to have some stress about being here. this is not different from what we're talking about. So you at first are only awaking the inner world very little, right? When you just go there. So sometimes you go there and then you wake up in the inner world. And so just like a baby, you cannot withstand to go there a lot. So you need to retire yourself from it, which for us means, so for a baby, it means to sleep. So you go into the consciousness dimension, so that you go into the consciousness state of being asleep. And, they can only withstand so much of the awakening state to the physical world. And when they are there, they're generally fairly stressed. It's not that different. So you wake up into the inner world by putting your consciousness there. And then once you are in that state, then you also assume you are like a baby, which means that it can be stressful. It has moments of peace and being fine, and it has moments of distress because it is very hard to understand. It is hard to, you don't get it. You don't understand anything. You don't control anything. It makes no sense. It's very much like a baby. That mindset perhaps will give you some understanding of the state in which we are and also what it takes to grow. And the fact that how does the baby grow? Mostly by just staying there. Mostly by just staying there long enough so that things make sense. And then eventually it gets easier and easier until it reaches a certain level at which the baby can be very active. And so the baby then starts trying to walk and starts trying to talk and the kinds of things that it does quite concertedly. It's not that different. So the mindset I would like to call is a mindset of every time you go inwards, you are waking up in a different world where you begin as a sort of baby. And you have to have a little bit of patience, but also have the understanding that even though you cannot see, there is a lot to see. And then perhaps you should try to pay attention to that, to what is there to see. That's sort of the call. And overall, just stop the obsession with optimization of meditation, and that mindset. Now, don't get me wrong. You can do whatever you can do. And if at this point you can meditate by getting an app and doing 5 minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes of guided meditation, then by all means do that. Interestingly enough, I think that Sam Harris's Waking Up app has a beginning series, and I think that series is just amazing. It's a really amazing series. These are meditations of 10 minutes followed by 10 minutes of a class, and I think that thing is spectacular. Super, super worth it. But again, the mindset of somebody who is doing that is a mindset of, how do I ease my way into meditation? Do you get the problem of thinking of easing your way into meditation? The problem of that is that it has the notion that this life that you are living now is the life. And so what I want meditation to be is a product that improves my life. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to put it into my life in a way that is the least disturbing that it can be. So I'm going to just make that thing fit there, those 20-minute increments fit at just the right spot so that it does not bother me. And then I'm going to power through it, because then I'm sorry, then meditation does become a chore. And I am going to just do this activity with that kind of this mindset, right? The mindset that you are minimizing, right? I want to take the least amount. I want the biggest bang for my buck. And that's I want to build the routine. I want to build the habit of meditating, and just you see how this is like a product. It makes it be like a product. But if you listen to what I talked about yesterday, meditation is a sort of word for an activity is a word for a sort of activity. That's what I want to say. That it hides what it is, because meditation is to the inner world what being awake is to this reality. So it's just a bit too big to be put in those terms. So meditating 20 minutes and doing it with that mindset is kind of equivalent to saying to somebody to, just go there and think about your problems for 20 minutes. And go to a teenager who's so concerned about what everyone thinks and tell the teenager, hey, spend 20 minutes every day thinking about how it's silly to be so concerned with what everybody else thinks. Now, consider what is wrong with that. Because if you tell a teenager to do that, and the teenager spends time at 20 minutes every day concerned about, thinking through and analyzing and considering all the situations, sort of like a therapy, a 20-minute therapy every day for that particular problem of caring about what everyone else thinks. On the one hand, it is true that that symptom, it will alleviate. So that teenager will probably start to feel better. It's going to start to grow up in that dimension, in a sense. So you realize that, 20 minutes a day of meditation is going to achieve a lot. So it's not that I'm saying it is bad. I'm saying that it is not the way you should look at it. Not because it's bad, but because there is better things. There's much, much better. I'm talking about something so much bigger that is not even in the same scale. But it's not that it is bad. If you make a teenager do that, a teenager will improve its life. But it will not stop being a teenager. And that's the issue here. If you make the teenager do that, it will improve that symptom. But it is still a teenager. While being in that state, the moment you stop, the moment you change the circumstances, that thing will return, because it is in the essence of being a teenager that you are concerned with what other people think, because you are understanding that you will need to operate in society and you will need to occupy a place there. And it is very problematic because you don't really have a sense of self that is well developed. You don't truly understand society. You don't know what you're made of. And so this is all very concerning and very important. And so you can patch the issue, you can decrease the anxiety, but you'll forever be fixing that problem because the teenager has not overcome its teenager condition. And the mindset should not be a mindset of patching and fixing. The mindset should be a mindset of overcoming. And in the case of a teenager, it's overcoming the teenager condition. And how do you overcome the teenager condition? By growing up and becoming an adult. And how do you do this? Well, sometimes by virtue of time, but that's not enough because some adults have a teenager mentality and capacity. It is truly about experiencing things and living the life of a teenager until you've had enough experiences and you've taken enough responsibility and you've aimed higher so that eventually you realize, oh, I'm an adult. And notice what is the mindset of an adult. Does an adult patch the not caring about like what other people think? Don't get me wrong, adults do care about what other people think in general, but it's not the same as a teenager, right? A teenager is concerned with that in every possible way. It's just at the essence of being one. Did the adult patch that characteristic of a teenager? That's not what the adult did. What happened is that the adult overcame that problem. It didn't fix the problem. It became someone else. That person has a higher perspective of reality. That person looks at the problem of a teenager and thinks, that is child's play. Who's worried about that? It disappears from the realm of concern. That's what I want you to have in mind for your problems. Because the way you overcame the problem of being a baby is by being a child. And when you became a child and you became interested in concepts and became concerned with how to control your emotions, which is basically the main preoccupation of a child, how you control yourself and how you relate to others and how you learn concepts, you learn things. When you are like that, the child is no longer concerned with walking and talking. It disappears from the realm of issues. It's no longer a concern. And it gets even better when you get higher and higher. So think about the teenager. Is the teenager concerned with self-control? Some are. But if you think about, a properly well-raised teenager, sure, if you're in puberty, it can be pretty hard. But consider, generally speaking, a teenager is not concerned with overcoming tantrums, and is not concerned with how to behave at a restaurant, and is not concerned with learning this and this and that word and the meaning of all the words. It is not concerned about this. It is not part of his problem. It's all of his energy is on the social and in the preparation for the future. So, and because it is there, because it has gone to that place, because now that is your concern, when you look back and you think, oh my God, I thought this was so difficult. And now you look back and it's like, this is nothing. You get it? It's, on the one sense, you do have to practice getting better at your problems. But you only truly overcome your problems not when you get better at them, but when you become someone else who is concerned with something higher. And that person looks back and has perspective. You look back and you look at it and it's like, oh, with the perspective I have now, that is nothing. With the perspective of an adult, the problems of a teenager are nothing. With the perspectives of a 40-year-old, the problems of a 20-year-old are nothing. Like when you look back, I have a more respect for those problems, but I also think that they're kind of easy because I'm concerned with more. And what is that thing? What is that growth? That growth is the expansion of the world you live in. So in the last discussion, I was showing you how growing up is an expansion of your perception capacity, is an expansion of your reality. And so as you expand your reality, you end up with good, healthy perspective about the previous reality that was reduced. And then when you look at the previous reality that is reduced with the mindset, with the eyes of somebody who is now in this bigger world, the problem no longer exists. That problem is not that you don't care because, oh my God, it's nothing. No, it's that it is small. I mean, you never stop as a human needing to care for your survival. You still need to eat and have some shelter and security. No matter what, you need to find a way to do this, and this needs to continue happening. You might be so lucky to have that provided for you, or you may need to provide for yourself. This doesn't disappear. It's just easy. It's just stop being a problem. And it's the same thing for your relationships, right? So it might be so hard to have a relationship and to have a peaceful relationship and so on. Well, that expanded mindset then looks back at that and thinks that's easy. You get it? So, when you first get married, there is a lot to work on. And then you worry about that work. But there are mindsets, when you are in an expanded vision of what a marriage even is, that's so much easier. And that's kind of like what I want to bring to your attention. And so the mindset should not be one of, I am going to put these things and I'm going to patch my anxiety. I'm going to meditate. Why do people meditate? Well, people meditate. A lot of people, not everyone, right? But they meditate because they want to decrease their anxiety. They want to improve their mental health. They want to decrease their hang-ups. They want to have better control of their emotions. They want to have a control of their thoughts. They feel very overwhelmed. Do you see the problem here? That person, all these things, the life that feeds this is going to continue feeding this. So you patch it with more and more meditation. More and more meditation would be a good thing, but you patch it with just continuing to meditate. So you meditate in 20 minutes with that mindset, and then you feel better. But you are still that person who's going to bring new sources of anxiety and new sources of hang-ups and new sources of trauma, new sources of all these things that they just keep coming back because you are that person. You need to be someone else. When you understand that there is a bigger reality to know, and this is coded speech in a sense, because some of you will understand better if I say, well, I'm talking about turning towards a spiritual life. So I'm talking, and you don't have to, okay? So you can be a atheistic, materialistic person and still look at meditation in the way I am talking. So with the language I'm talking, it's unlikely you're going to remain that way in a sense, if you really go inside and then you see what's there. But in any case, you don't have to take a religious approach, but if you can, that will make it easier. So I'm talking here about taking the spiritual view. You see, a religion has no problem with bigger asks. A religion will ask you, you may or not do it, but a religion has no problem asking all your life of you, asking all of the dedication, asking, the asks of religion are really high, and they should be. They should be, because it's on the essence of it. And we can talk about this in another day. I'm asking you to consider this in a religious way. And you can be directly with meditation alone. Basically, I'm going to go there and get to know the inner world. Or it can be something more religious. I want to know God. I want to really know God. And then it serves any religion, any religion you can think of. I cannot think of a single religion that is not served by a person going into the inner world. I think all religions have that call inside. They just have different methodology, different ways to look at it. But at the end of the day, that's what I'm talking about, is when you turn towards God, or you turn towards the ineffable, and you turn towards the divine, or you turn towards your true self, you turn towards your essence, your soul, whatever this is, truly, not like, oh, it's a 20-minute thing to solve my anxiety, but truly like, oh, I'm going to go in that spiritual quest kind of mentality. That's when you become somebody else who then overcomes. You don't solve, you don't patch, you overcome. So you pass that state. And then it serves to have the child mindset, which is the mindset of curiosity and exploration, which, by the way, should be everyone's mindset, because this should be the mindset of an adult with respect to the concerns of an adult. But we do lose it, right? Or it gets kind of twisted. And in children, it is very pure and very easy to observe. So that's an image that is easy to bring up, which is that mindset of, hey, I can just explore. So from a practical perspective, I am calling for you to consider that, the mindset of this is serious pursuit. This is life mission type of pursuit. And also that you be more exploratory, more free, more curious about it, and less set on technique. And again, techniques are great. And by the way, some techniques are better than others. And the most important part of technique, though, is that some techniques interact better with some person or another. So if you are inserted in a highly Christian society, a highly Christian group, and you are a Christian yourself, and you're a true believer in the Christian religions, one of them, then it will be probably easier for you to draw from the techniques and the things that those religions have. So techniques can be optimized for your social context, for your personality, and also for what they want to achieve. So it's not that techniques are bad. We are going to talk a lot about techniques in this, in this practice. Techniques are great. And by the way, through techniques, then you achieve some things, and then you see more. But again, there is not single technique to do forever that's going to be the optimal one. There are some people that will disagree. You can go to a Zen monastery, and then you're going to be doing a fairly monotonous sort of practice forever and ever. And, everything can be learned from there. It's not that it is not effective. Certainly, they make the entire environment serve that, so that micro society does work better in that direction. So they solve one big problem there. And if you have that type of mindset, if you are that kind of hardcore, because, Zen is hardcore. So if you are that kind of hardcore person, that's going to talk to you. And that's wonderful. But what if you're not? And most of us are not. And yet, does that mean that the knowing of the essence of divinity and overcoming suffering is not for you? I say in some sense it is more difficult because, a monk has decided that their entire life is dedicated to it, and they made it so that their entire reality supports that. By all means, it's not easy to do it as a normal person. But not only is it possible, it's in a way fun. I don't know how you feel about this, but I think it's fun. It's interesting to interact with this normal reality where you have a family and profession and you have to figure out, wow, how do you make this degree of perception that is sort of like the one that most people are in, or at least trying to be in? How do you make that one work within the higher dimension of what knowing the essence of reality is? And I know some of these things I'm saying are some obscure and hard to know, and I'll try to make them clear as we go, because I'm not talking of simple things here, but it is what it is. And at least I'm telling you about things that I cannot yet explain properly, but it's still the right things. This is what I want to say. And all right, and so I'm also calling for more time. Basically, so what am I doing here? I come here and we do a yoga class, and I'm doing yoga with Adrienne in this sequence, and we're going to do other people as well. There are some other people that I like. I don't mind, as long as it is somebody who's doing a movement of the body that is focused and not so utilitarian, not super focused on 1, 2, 3, 4, doesn't have that mentality. As long as something like that, I'm cool with it. So there's nothing really special on, we'll follow Adrienne. We'll follow whatever practice it is that moves us. So there are reasons for it. We're going to cover that. But then we get into the cake of this practice, which is we're going to meditate. And don't get me wrong, as we go forward, we're going to do more pranayama. We're going to do some breathing exercises. We're going to discuss technique. We're going to try things. Great. But right now, what am I doing? I'm just going there and just meditating. And I don't even know how long I meditated, but I know it's more than most people meditate. And that can be uncomfortable and cool. But have you tried? Have you tried to do it? And when you talk about these things, some people may say, oh, that's kind of trivial. And we're just saying, but have you meditated 1 hour every day? Most people have never done it in their lives, ever. Not once have they turned inwards and been there 1 hour. 1 hour. It's, and people will tell you, oh, I have real world problems. Like I don't have the time to be concerned with the essence of God. And to that, I have to say, if you're going to say that, I have real world problems, I have to solve real things, I have trouble focusing on my work, or I have, a job that sucks, and I have, money issues, and why am I going to be doing this from one? Are you kidding me? Who's got time for that? Yeah. If you have that mentality, you will continue to have those problems, and perhaps you will solve that problem. But you'll be the type of person that has those problems. So you may work through that and solve that problem. And then you will find the next problem and the next problem and the next problem. Or you can expand your reality, and then all of these problems together will come into perspective. That's the call, you see. And don't get me wrong. If you have a lot not figured out, there is a level at which this becomes very hard. Because it is the same thing that if you're a baby, you can't take on the problems of a teenager. It's hard. So there are points at which it's just not really possible. Well, in that case, it might not be your time yet. And then again, you can still dabble on it. Why not? You can still dabble on, you can still play with it. But I get it, so there is levels at which something is really not available. Not available. Someone who cannot survive, truly, somebody under threat cannot be dedicated to an expansion of reality, right? This just things that cannot. But for a lot of people who think that way, that is really not the truth. It's just that they are finding ways to not go inside. Another one is that I don't have time. Who's got time for that? Like, imagine 1 hour a day. Who has time for who has time for 2-3 hours of dedication to something like that every day? Who has time for that? And to that I also say, sure, I mean, it is hard to get that type of time. But do you have time to do it once? Because you do, right? Everybody has 1 hour once. I'm sure you have 1 hour today that you're spending on social media that you could spend on something like that. And yet you don't. Why? Why? Because it's hard. Because there's something in you that knows that what's inside is major. There's something in you that knows that this is no trivial thing. That's scary. And the sad thing is that it's true that when you turn inward for the first time, you're a baby. And so most of the things that are there are unpleasant. So a lot of what's inside is your own shit. That's the first thing that comes in. So it takes a little bit for you to start to discover the marvels. And there are marvels. Even the language marvels is too little for what is there. It's in another scale. No pleasure of this world can compare to what is there. But it is true that the first thing you see is your shit. So it is negative in essence. But, at first. But again, also that it is not just negative. You know that it is major. You know inside. You know that there is a lot, right? You know something big. There's something in you that is scared. Again, it's like a teenager refusing to grow up. I tell my children that being an adult is a choice. There is no moment in your life when you're gonna feel like taking the trash out or feel like emptying the dishwasher or doing the laundry. It is never going to happen that you will, perhaps to some of you, y'all sickos, but for most people, there will never be a moment that you're like, oh, all of a sudden this is great. No, it's just that one day you realize or you accept that is your responsibility and that you got to do it and that now it's time and it's yours. And, I take the trash out. I empty the dishwasher. I do the laundry. Oh, there's a lot of laundry. Who does it? I do it. And sometimes life just throws you there, right? You leave your parents' home and then now you have to deal with it. Well, in a sense, is what I'm asking you to do, just leave your parents' home. But notice the mindset, right? So suppose that you continue to live in your parents' home, or suppose that I don't know. So suppose you continue to live in your parents' home. You could perhaps continue having somebody do the laundry for you or remind you to do your own laundry. You understand the mindset? Somebody else is the one reminding you. At some point, you decide, oh, no, that's on me. That's my turn. That is a choice. At some point, you got to decide. So becoming an adult is different in a sense from a teenager. So there are stages that you have to go through, which are not really choices. You kind of work and, live and then it overcomes. But a lot of the adult condition is a choice. You just, at some point you say, that's on me. That's what I do. That's how I am. That's the kinds of things I am responsible for. And so at some point, then perhaps you might decide, hey, you know what? I'm tired of suffering. I'm tired of suffering with the mundane issues. At some point, you might look at all that ails you and realize it's always the same. It's always a lot of the same. And it looked so big, and yet it keeps sort of repeating, and it keeps sort of being more or less. And perhaps you might have a glimpse of the fact that actually it's not as big as I think. There's something reduced on it. There's something that is kind of small. It's important, but still there's an impression that you might get that, can I just be done with it? You understand the mindset. So there is sometimes you look at your problems and you think, I need to solve that problem, and it consumes your life. But sometimes there are some things that you like, can I just be done with it? You see that mentality of like, I'm done. I'm done. I'm not fixing this anymore. I am done. That kind of thing, that kind of thing is in the inner world. When you are done, you got to turn in, because it's there. The answer is there. And the answer is not how you fix it. The answer is that you grow, and then you look back and you're like, this is just fine. It's okay. It's okay. It's just one more day. This ties to the concept of detachment and how it actually cannot be practiced. You cannot practice detachment. You have to become detached in some other way, and we'll talk about this too. But you understand that? So why does somebody who is detached, right? So imagine an enlightened person. They don't mind a lot of the hardships of normal life. Why? Because they have perspective. So I'm asking for more perspective. And you can't force perspective. You need to get it. That's the idea. So I hope you get this. This is not easy. It's not simple. But it is, I think, the best mindset to understand what I'm doing here and to join and to do your own thing. But truly to have the mindset of exploration and discovery of some new form of reality, expansion of your perception, expansion of your reality, the knowledge of what the nature of reality even is, that it is much bigger than you think, and then overcoming. Then you overcome. Then it just becomes easier. I one day looked at my life and I realized, oh shit, I kind of don't have problems. In a way, it's sort of like that. It's actually really true. And how did that happen? I don't know. You look back, you have all the problems, and all of a sudden you look back and you're like, yeah, they kind of like, not really a lot of shit. You see, you look back, So I want you to go forward so you can look back instead of like being on the hamster wheel of what is the next problem I solve, because you have the mentality of a normal adult. Let's overcome the adult condition. You hopefully overcome the teenager condition. And to be fair, it is hard to be a functional adult. But you perhaps overcome enough. Perhaps you become enough of a grown-up in enough dimensions. And it doesn't have to be a law. It just has to be enough that you're like, you know what, I'm tired of this game. The adult game of the adult problems, I'm kind of done with it. I'm tired of it. How about I go forward? How about I attempt something higher? And then you might just turn back and realize, oh, look, it's gone now. All right. I hope this was helpful. And yeah, I'll see you tomorrow.